out. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 539 for June 19th, 2023. And I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
I'm Ryan McQuaid.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm perfectly symmetrical for our conversation.
Is the horizon in the middle?
I am Jailer. With Wes Anderson, look, we're going to talk about that, I think, for an hour.
Yeah.
Wes Anderson, the trailer for Asteroid City, I've not seen the film yet, but the horizon in the trailer is in the middle for the entire film. And I got to say, to quote David Lynch, boring.
Yeah, because that's what we equate.
Obviously, Wes
with
Anderson, a very boring visualist.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, his
You
films
need
have
those
never.
dollhouse aesthetics. Barbie's already coming out. That's all the dollhouse aesthetic you need.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about Wes Anderson, and we will mostly be comparing the real Wes Anderson to the AI version of him that has taken over the
Hell
world.
yeah.
I can't tell the difference.
I can't either.
I mean yeah, his
who
best
would've
movie is
thought?
Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Star
It's
Wars.
just crazy how AI is just... honestly, is AI better than Wes Anderson? The question has to. The question has to be.
That
asked.
is what we're titling this episode. Is AI better than Wes Anderson?
Honestly, it's a fair question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Which,
Oh
you
god,
know.
we probably alienated so many listeners already who are hearing us for the first time.
I
They think we're
mean-
just these Wes cynics right now.
I mean, listen, all those conversations were they're so reductive and so stupid online. And then like people like with the, because Asteroid City just came out, and then I guess it got like bombed on the user score or whatever, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's just like, oh, so I guess now Wes Anderson's in his like phase of like how Fincher was with Mank, and
Wes
no
Anderson
one
is
from
weirdly getting real
Dunked on.
shade online.
Yeah.
My brother
It's
the
turned
other
into that
day.
for him.
My brother the other day texted me just out of nowhere. We weren't talking about movies or Wes Anderson or anything. He was just like, dude, Wes Anderson is getting a ton of hate on my timeline right now. What is happening?
But isn't he always been a little polarizing? Because his films are so quirky. I feel like people either like him or they don't.
We will definitely talk about it. And there is, he's such a specific artist that there will always be kind of hate for people like that, which is actually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I think the corners that people go to with Wes Anderson specifically are pretty reductive.
Yeah.
Although sometimes maybe a little warranted.
Well,
It's
I guess it depends on the topic, because
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes other directors, maybe even like a Tarantino, falls into the same category with regard to maybe some of their casting choices, which I guess could also be part of that conversation. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus more on Wes, the filmmaker, and what his stylish choices are and whether we think they work or not. And yes, for all the cynics out there listening, we might be making some jokes. We like Wes Anderson. So we just got to make that clear. We're
very pro Wes Anderson.
we're very pro Wes.
Very anti AI Wes Anderson.
He's good at his job.
He is.
He is. Which the AI, not. It's that
Wes
robot
Anderson
right now.
Wes Anderson would absolutely scoff at my.
I
robot
want to
right now.
see a Wes Anderson robot
This
movie now.
geometric setup back here is totally.
I
I'm
just,
sorry, Wes.
Yeah.
I know he's
Yeah.
a listener.
I really
and a
want to
watcher.
see. Yeah, I really want to see an AI related Wes Anderson movie now. One that he actually made. Like, I would love to see like a version of RoboCop by him or something like that.
Everybody's been talking about AI the last couple of weeks, and and it's been getting a lot of bad rap, and especially with Wes Anderson. I know I wasn't a big fan of that Spielberg movie, but goddamn, like
Might be the best movie ever made. Might be the best movie ever made.
AI this, AI that. I'm like, all right, calm down, Haley Joel Osment trying to
That
like
is
move the
a
Discord.
that is a spectacular movie. Should we just talk about
So-
AI?
No,
I'm
because
down.
I haven't seen it in a
Talk
long
about
time.
That,
I really need to catch up with it. It's
That was one.
like a
On a
list.
rewatch a few months ago, I was like, oh boy.
Hey, it's on
it's a movie.
How did
It's
you
on the
cry?
Criterion
A lot?
channel now. They have it like this, like under this, like I think AI
Yeah, I saw that.
brand.
They have a whole category of AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime too, or maybe it's just on the Criterion channel now. But
It was
I
on
watched it
Prime. I
on-
don't know if it still is.
might have watched it on Paramount Plus.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah.
You know, everything's on streaming these days.
Shout
Let's
out
keep
to
talking about Wes. I'm
shout
gonna
out
watch
to
that.
my shout out to my father-in-law for giving me his Paramount Plus password, which is how I'm doing my Mission Impossible rewatches right now. So
Netflix is going to be real mad at you, Jay.
Yeah.
Don't you dare tell them what you're doing.
well, luckily Paramount Plus is doing so poorly that
It's
they
just-
can't
please
enact
share.
any sort
Please
of
share
Please
your
watch our
any sort of-
content.
Yeah.
It's like, have a Paramount Plus party. Bring 500 people over. Just watch our stuff.
Paramount Plus. Paramount
all
Plus
the
actually
opposite.
has a pretty decent library. I like
do,
Paramount
yeah.
Plus.
Well, and they also have the access to. This is way off the rails, but of course it is. They also have access to all the Showtime shows. So, like, you know,
I think you got to
if
pay.
your
extra
dad
for
wants
that.
to watch Billions and your mom wants to watch Yellow Jackets, they've got that for you.
I do want to watch Yellow
Yeah.
Jackets, but I think you have
Yeah,
to
I
pay
do
extra
too.
for Showtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At any
Anyway,
rate, Wes Anderson.
You know what's crazy? How has Amazon Prime Video not improved their user interface for their entire existence?
You think
Because
they
it's
get Wes
Amazon.
Anderson?
They have
They don't
such
care.
a good. They have a really good library and
catalog.
an absolutely unusable interface. It is impossible
Yeah.
to sort through the stuff that you're looking for on Amazon.
Well, I feel the
It's
same way
like
about Disney Plus.
crazy.
I feel the same way about Disney Plus. And lately, I feel the same way about Max, the newly dubbed Max.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a new user interface. They're certainly working out the kinks there. But man, that thing is glitchy as hell.
HBO
think
Max I
Apple-
thought was pretty good actually.
HBO Max was, but Max right now, because of everything new that they're doing, it's so
would've
glitchy.
thought?
I know.
I never saw that coming.
Change your stuff.
Drop
I
the
actually
HBO, it's
think
cleaner.
Yeah. It is.
I think Apple's
Sure, the
probably
fact that you had to
best.
download
You know,
a separate
for
app
that.
from
they
Max
didn't just
instead
change
of
the
HBO
app.
Max. I
Yeah,
mean,
they didn't just change that app.
I
They
get it
just
from an
like-
IT standpoint, but it's still frustrating.
there will be a Harvard case study in MBA programs about the idiocy of the Max transition.
And not even just the transition, but like the marketing.
The
Of it,
poor
and the
marketing.
choices.
Everything about
Just
it was
awful.
awful.
All because they
Yeah.
wanted to have freaking. Well, here's my question.
No,
Why-
no, no.
So
Let
as
them
far
have
as far as Warner is concerned, it's Discovery is the other big partner. It was like Discovery,
Yes,
Warner
Discovery.
Discovery.
Yeah.
How is Warner or how is Discovery like on the same footing as Warner
'cause
Brothers and HBO to be the
Because they
other
got
half?
they got like HGTV and like all that stuff.
I'm
And
really
Food
glad the
Network,
Property
all
Brothers are as
is-
important
there
as
is
the
an-
Sopranos.
There is an
Yeah.
audience
Yeah.
for them fixer-uppers out there. Like you'd be
man.
surprised.
But
They're really big.
the Chip and JoJo, who I enjoy and my wife really likes, they were already on HBO Max.
True. But
Look, none of this
maybe they
makes
feel
any
the
sense.
branding is
Let's
confusing.
not overthink.
So if the branding is confusing, let's just make it more confusing.
I think Jay's like me. We're just Larry David trying to figure out all of this.
Oh, that was a very Larry David transition. I just
Yeah.
said there.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me a little Lewis Black there too.
Yeah, he's just like getting a little angry. You know what I mean?
Let me get a little
more F
Seinfeld
words.
on.
Congratulations,
What's the
HBO Max.
what's the
You
deal
ruined
with
streaming.
streaming services? They can't decide what they want to do.
Well, I don't know, Jerry. That doesn't sound really good. You know what I mean? So you would have thought I
That's
would.
actually pretty good, guys. That was pretty good.
We're taking this on the
all right,
road.
do that, but now Wes Anderson.
What's the deal with Wes Anderson? He's all symmetrical and he can't help himself. I mean,
What's
it's
the deal
crazy.
with bright colors in his movies.
I'm not even gonna attempt it. I can't do
I
accents.
can't-
I
I
can't.
can't
I
either.
can't do impressions. I
Honestly,
never could.
I got to say this about Wes Anderson as we transition into finally having that conversation 10 minutes in, is that I recently rewatched all of his movies, and I know he seems to be getting a lot of hate, and he seems to be getting dogged on by the internet. Not Isle of Dog, just dogged on. But I got to say, upon review, really good filmography. Not a lot of bad, not a single bad movie in there for me. Couple at least I think 3 5-star film, 4 5-star films for me actually.
Ooh, I do not have that. Far.
Yeah.
That's 40% of his
That's
current filmography,
ambitious.
not including
Yeah.
Asteroid City.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, Asteroid City will not be getting 5 stars this year.
Oh, you've seen that one already. Okay.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, I
It's
thought you
just,
were saying
my rules are. Let's see, Brendan. Let me explain rules to you.
Well, you broke your
So-
rule.
You did break your
already
rule
broke
earlier
your
this year,
once.
though.
Yeah, I did, but I don't think
what rules are made
City's gonna
for.
break. So,
Hashtag
sometimes the rules-
contradiction.
Yeah, sometimes the rules meant to be broken, but then if you see the movie that broke the rule, then you'll understand. Jay knows that movie is will break
I mean,
your heart.
I like John Wick 4, but I mean,
I liked
It's like Ryan,
Shazam: Fury
Ryan,
of the Gods just as much as
Ryan,
anybody else.
in a past life, you broke the rules less often.
Exactly, but yeah,
I haven't seen The Flash yet, but I currently have a 5-star as its placeholder. We'll see if that changes.
I think that.
I don't know. I think Letterboxd might get mad at you. That's why they changed the algorithm. See?
Oh,
I
thank
mean,
goodness.
if you listen to Brennan and I's review of it,
Which
I
I did
think
today, actually.
I did.
you'll know that
today.
it'll stay. It's definitely not going to change.
Well, what I was so encouraged by is that you guys said it is one of the worst looking movies you've ever seen, which obviously for me is something I care about greatly. So I'm very excited for it.
Exactly. I can't wait for you to talk.
And Jay said, "Take my money." You know?
Please text us right away whatever star rating you're going to give it on Letterboxd, because I honestly don't know, but I'll simply say if you just give it nothing and just give it 0, if you could, I wouldn't be surprised if you did.
Honestly, Letterboxd should be able to give you a 0-star.
Zero.
movie.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
otherwise
and
you're
that
just not rating it. It just comes off as a
Yeah.
no rating.
It should be they should have some sort of symbol for it. Like,
Yeah,
they had the
like a
5,
circle
they had
with
the
Like
line
a circle with
down
an
the-
X. Yeah.
the flames for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. If you do a 0, it should be like a pitchfork or
like a
Pitchfork.
like an emoji of Tommy Wiseau or something like that.
Ooh, that'd
Cloudy
be funny,
night,
actually.
I don't
Like
know.
Letterbox, these are all free ideas.
These
Feel
are all
free to
free.
use any of them.
But yeah, no, I think his movies, obviously, Texas director. Gotta love Wes coming from Texas.
Oh yeah, it's true. I forgot about
boy.
that.
UT guy, so hook him. And
I
that's
didn't
where
know that
he
he
met
was a UT guy.
him and Owen Wilson. Yep, that's where they met. That's where they started writing
Interesting.
stuff at UT, and then they dropped out, so they didn't finish. Which,
Like a true Texan.
like a true Texan.
That really backfired.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the 4 5-star movies I have are Rushmore, Tenenbaums, which is my favorite, and Fantastic Mr. Fox and Grand Budapest. I think that those have solidified. I've watched those the most probably. I think the lowest one I had was either Zizou or Darjeeling Limited. I can look, but there's still moments in those movies where I get really emotional, and there's really, even though the movies don't overall work for me at times, like the last 10 minutes of Life Aquatic are wonderful.
Life
Great.
Aquatic, like
Yeah.
the set design of that movie, I adore. The movie, I just don't like that much.
I
just
think I'm the
doesn't
highest
grip
on that
me.
one.
Yeah, Brendan, you really like it.
And
That's a
I
top 5 Wes
assume-
Anderson film for me.
I assume the one that I'm the highest on of us is Darjeeling, which I really like.
yeah.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch that one. That's
I had
that's
that one on
bottom
my
tier for
Astro.
me from what I remember, but I don't know. Like my story with Wes Anderson, I think is so fascinating. It's kind of like Ryan's history with James Cameron in many ways. My history with Wes is very much in the category of character development.
Yeah.
Because
Very much so.
when JD and I first met and we were first doing
Jim.
InSession Film together, I admitted to not being the biggest Wes Anderson fan. And I forget where it was and when it was that I saw the symmetrical light, if you will. I think it was with Fantastic Mr. Fox. 'Cause that was the first of his movies. When I saw that for the first time,
That's so interesting that was the one that turned you.
well, yeah, it is. And even at the time, I didn't see it at the time when it first came out in 2009. I caught up with it later, and that was the one where I thought, okay, I can kind of see where his tone works, and I think it really does fit the almost the storybook kind of vibe that it's going for, especially one that is marketed towards children without being directly a children's movie. I love that film. That's my favorite Wes Anderson film still. But it kind of reopened, or it opened my eyes to what he's actually doing and what I could appreciate, which is why I do love movies like The Grand Budapest Hotel and The Royal Tenenbaums and Isle of Dogs, Life Aquatic. Those 5 there are probably my top 5, but the hard thing with Wes is that if you watch all of his movies so close together, they kind of run together, and that's not really a bad thing. He has an aesthetic and a style. But there's a consistency there that you have to give credit to.
That was my opinion too. And Ryan, you just did a recent rewatch, and JD, when I said that a while ago, you pushed back on that, saying that you found it very rewarding to watch them in quick succession like that. Whereas my first thought was that would get really repetitive. From a visual perspective, maybe not necessarily from a thematic or character perspective, but he certainly, that's where the criticism of Wes Anderson does come into play, and I think there is some merit, if little.
I think it's a little overblown though, Jay, because I do think, and JD, I'll let you speak to this as well, but I think the whole hyperbole. It was funny. I was watching JD the Flash review, and JD was speaking a lot to hyperbole at the beginning of that review. And it was really funny because I was like, yeah, now do Asteroid City. Because every time a Wes Anderson movie comes out, it's the most Wes Anderson movie you ever seen.
You know a director
Every review is that.
You know a director is good when his name becomes an adjective.
I think that's, I mean, it's, there are certain directors, they have their style. It's what solidifies
He has become increasingly dollhousey, though.
But it's not. But you know what, though? Yeah. I think that he's.
You go watch Bottle Rocket. That doesn't feel like it's from the same director.
No, but he develops that over time. I think obviously, the setups and everything. It's very much his own world. It's like Tarantino. Tarantino's leaned, as he has throughout his filmography, more and more into his tropes and his aesthetics. And it's what you see the evolution of somebody that's very comfortable in doing that. But really, I mean, like. I know I'm the highest on it. It's in my, it's my, I think my number 5 was the French Dispatch. And I know that you guys had things that you guys didn't.
I still like it.
I like it.
I have it
there's
7,
certain sections.
I really like 2/3 of it. The Chalamet portion, I think, is not very good.
See, for me, that improves every time. But I will say, I like that movie. That is the definition of like the most Wes Anderson movie of all time, right? Because you've got it being purposefully like that as a collection of different stories, right? And so it kind of lends itself to be like that. And, I think that, his stop motion animation stuff really works well for his palette and his whimsy.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, when I watched all these over the course of it was like 3 or 4 days, we watched like 2 a night, or whatever, or 3 a night.
Okay.
And honestly, they were very enjoyable. And if you package them together with the movie, it was weird enough that 2 at a time, I was packaging like Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. Then I was packaging Tenenbaums and Life Aquatic.
Yeah. So there was this aesthetic escalation to it.
Was
so it was actually there was a smooth trajectory upward. I get you.
Like these movies belonged in the time in which you get a little bit more here, but it's still akin to the last one. And you get a little bit more here and it's akin to the last one. And then when you get to Isle of Dog and French Dispatch, you're like, all bets are off, but there's still wonderful, character development and details and scenes. And even in that over aesthetic sort of stuff, there's so much detail that I don't understand why people throw it away. Cause it's almost like, Jay, when we talked about Soderbergh in the Ocean's movies and how everyone thinks that those movies are so simple and easy to make, but they're actually hell on earth. I think that these movies are not easy to make for Wes Anderson.
No,
they're
the problem
super complicated.
I think the criticism is that they're so similar. And I think looking at it, from 30,000 feet, I understand that. And there is a tone, and I think that tone has gotten, in my opinion, a little more repetitive as his career has gone on. You see, he's got a little bit with Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. He's almost got a little bit of this punk rock kind of grunge 90s energy to it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot more reckless than what we see now, which is so specific and so controlled, which is why I think he likes animation. Is because you cannot, that's the one medium you are completely in control of.
Yep.
And I think that's why people like him and Guillermo del Toro are drawn to that medium. But you look at his movies as they have gone on, and I think it really started with Zissou, which Zissou has this immaculate.
That was kind of the
design.
transition point. I feel
Yeah,
like.
Yeah.
and it does feel like I think Dollhouse is a little bit of a fair thing to say about it. Whether that's positive or negative is up to you.
Yeah.
But there's certainly this idea of providing this sense of artificial, and he's very much going for that artifice at times. I mean, you have the big Grand Budapest things where the ski lifts are on wires, and it's very purposeful that he's showing
There's
that,
even an
right?
animated chase scene in the French Dispatch at one point too.
And an animated chase sequence in Budapest too.
Yeah, true.
And so he's definitely going through these like weird mediums where it's supposed to feel beyond reality in some way, and that is reflected both in the scenes when human characters are on the screen and when they're not. And the question is, how much tolerance do you have for that much control? Because it is so controlled to the point where some people call it cold or detached or whatever they may call it, or maybe where the visuals are overwhelming the story. But certainly you can't deny that he is one of the most ubiquitous, single-minded filmmakers working today. But I don't blame anyone for finding him this obnoxious. I will admit.
I don't know. I don't think you can be I mean, if you want to say his films are obnoxious, fine. The person himself, I mean, like,
No, not him. No.
yeah, like he barely
He's not
talks.
a public person at all. I'm talking about his movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
JD, what do
I
you think of
misspoke.
Wes Anderson? You like him? You don't like him, do you?
No. I feel about Wes Anderson in the same ways that you guys have talked about something like There Will Be Blood or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and how defining those movies are for you in terms of your cinephilia. That's Wes Anderson for me. Wes Anderson is kind of my entry into, hey, movies are different.
He's your formative guy.
Oh, that's
he
awesome.
is my formative guy, 100%. And
I actually didn't know that about you. That's cool.
yeah, so Wes Anderson, I have
Well, you know.
loved from the very beginning. He's always been my dude. And I think why I will push back against that criticism, because I don't look at it any differently than any other artist and how they have their own distinct style. Like, nobody talks about Scorsese and how it's a Scorsese film just by watching it, or Tarantino, but those aren't criticisms. Those are often, they're lofted as praises for those filmmakers. Or Hans Zimmer and how he's known to be as a composer. And maybe that's a little bit of a criticism toward him, but mostly people love his scores. Or John Williams. A lot of John Williams scores have the same tonality behind them, and yet we love
because
them.
they make the hairs raise up on your arms.
They make you weep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or any musical band out there that you love, a lot of their albums might not be verbatim the same, but they have a flavor that is attached to them that you love. And that's how I feel about Wes Anderson. Is there a tonal symmetry, perhaps a little bit of a visual symmetry that makes
Literally
up
and
the nucleus
figuratively,
of who he is? Yes. Are the films verbatim the same? Absolutely not. And to claim that is disingenuous.
I agree with that. And I think the reason why I think maybe that criticism exists is because it's so easy, to your point, Jay, that you mentioned earlier, from a very, like, a long bird's eye view, a 3,000 feet away view, I think as you called it. It's easy to latch on to the symmetry because it's right there in front of you.
It's baby's first auteur.
Yeah.
You watch Tim Burton movies when you're young, and it's like, oh, these feel like they're made by the same person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how Wes Anderson.
That's actually a really good
as well.
comparison, to be honest with you, Jay. Because
Especially
that's
early
Wes
Burton, when he didn't get sucked into CGI fest.
Right. Well, yeah, it's totally up until right before
Hollow.
Planet of the Apes is kind of.
I'd still put Big Fish in there, but
but Sweeney, even his version of Sweeney Todd's very much like.
But
Probably his
you know what I'm
last
talking
great
about with
movie.
early Edward Scissorhands.
When- I
everything
think
practical,
everything
gothic,
pre-
gravestone
Alice
like.
in Wonderland
Yeah.
is really still got his DNA in it. Yeah, I think that like I agree with you, JD. I mean, like I think of the Coen brothers. They were they were another
They are
band
and
of,
they aren't. I think they're
I
a
no,
lot
they
more
they
diverse.
they
than-
their
I'm
style,
kinda with Jay. Yeah.
their sense of I think more maybe not visually, but definitely textually in the way that
well,
they
maybe
construct
when
characters.
Wes Anderson makes his No Country for Old Men, I'll rethink that opinion. But
I mean, I would love to see the Coen brothers get back together. Oh wait, that's right, that's not going to happen.
that's
But,
crazy.
but
The Safdies, the Coens, what
I
are
mean,
we doing?
but I mean, you look at even somebody like arguably the biggest director on the planet, Nolan. He has his own aesthetics and things that he does throughout his films that people find super annoying, or they're able to pull out commonalities that
You know when you're
it's
watching a Nolan movie.
Yeah, you know when you're watching a Nolan
and I
movie.
think those are fair criticisms as well.
Yeah, but especially now, like even like with Nolan, there was a clear point where there was a transition that was made aesthetically speaking, right? And a lot of it comes down to who you choose as your cinematographer. Because for a while, Nolan was using what was his name, Wally Fishner,
Pfister,
yeah, and then made the transition to Hoyt von Hoytma. And there's a clear distinction between the two eras of Nolan. And you can kind of say the same thing about Wes Anderson, like the more punky, grungy vibe of his early works, like you were talking about, Jay. And then there's The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and from there it's a completely different kind of aesthetic game. And yes, there are similarities because what you see on the surface is usually always the same in some way, but you latch on to the drama of those films. They have very different vibes sometimes. And now maybe when that vibe doesn't quite work for you, you find yourself a bit more critical of what you're seeing because it is so present. It's so there. Like a movie like Moonrise Kingdom is not one of my favorites from Wes Anderson.
That is far and away my least favorite.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. Like it's the only one that I fully do not like.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but I have a hard time latching onto that for some reason. So that film visually, I find myself looking at those things more because the character dynamics and the drama don't bring me in to differentiate it. So if that's the case, then I mean, in many ways, if you're criticizing Wes Anderson for this, you don't really like Wes Anderson movies because you're not looking at what's behind what you're just seeing on screen. There's more to it than that.
I think he also just really writes some. He's a really great writer, and he's got great sense of humor. And I think people, they think
he's
about
funny. His movies are funny.
His movies are really funny. They're not. I mean, there is whimsy to them, but there's a lot of dark humor in it. I mean, I think of every time I watch Grand Budapest, I forget about them taking the boy with apple painting and then putting the two naked women having sex photo up instead, and it's like it's such a subtle thing, and then like. Because then later it pays off with like Adrian Brody's like reading the papers as to why they're not getting boy with that. And then he looks up because he knows it's there. And then he goes, what the hell is this shit? You know what I mean? Like
I still think the whack bat sequence from Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie.
I mean,
a lot of the humor is purely visual too, which is really, I mean, it's, you talk about how specific he is, that pays off in jokes, whatever you might find a little repetitive about them from a set design standpoint or whatever, it mostly really pays off in the context of the movie.
I do like that he works with aesthetically, he's working with his production teams and everything, and as a director he's solid, but then he does lend into the collaboration process a lot more, and I think his stronger efforts are when he does have multiple people there to write the films alongside him. He's worked with Wilson, he's worked with Jason Schwartzman, Roman Coppola is somebody that's worked with him a ton. Noah Baumbach working with him on that script for Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean,
the
idea of
Barbie.
Yeah.
And Shark Tale. Didn't he do
I mean, like the fact that
he did something.
Yeah, he did
something
like that.
Oh my gosh!
No, he did Madagascar 3. That's what he did.
That's what it was. It was one of the Madagascars. Yeah.
Wow.
The fact that I know that, I'm pulling that out of my pocket. But anyway, no, I think it's sort of like little genius ideas too about the fact that okay, like instead of having cuss words with these kids, with these animals, doing what the cuss, and like adding stuff like that, and there are like really specific things that also too. When you're talking about his style and aesthetic, the reason why they work with him is because in the hands of others, I don't think they would know how to get that.
Sure.
B, I think think it would be disingenuous and fall apart. So it really fits him perfectly. And yeah, I mean, I think he's best when he taps into his emotions and it kind of sneaks up on you. That's why I think Tenenbaums and Grand Budapest and Rushmore and Fantastic Mr. Fox are best, because those involve families and they involve a grander story and complex characters that, like, Rushmore as a movie is, to me, Rushmore is wild.
That's
now.
one that I think I've only seen it once and it didn't connect with me.
That
I need
movie,
to watch it. I need to watch
the
it
idea
again.
of like Schwartzman playing like essentially a high schooler, trying to go after the kindergarten teacher, and he's fighting an alcoholic Bill Murray the entire time. And then there's this stuff with like his like local theater things are like Apocalypse Now and Serpico. Like, it's such a wild movie when you watch it, because it's but then it's also very sincere, like the stuff with the dad at the barbershop, like little things like that are really, really touching.
Well,
you kind of forget about that because everyone talks about the style of the stuff. Anyway, JD, I don't know if you agree with any of that, but
I mean, I do. I actually, before I speak to that, kind of want to circle back 15 minutes ago, because I didn't really get a chance to finish my thoughts.
Oh, do you want to talk about HBO Max now too?
Yeah, let's talk about HBO Max.
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to finish up that thought.
Yeah, because the reason I wanted to bring up that that comparison is because I think it's just funny to me how people can bring up those criticisms with Wes Anderson when it can easily be lofted at a lot of other artists. So to me, I don't get bogged down in any of that. And you guys spoke to how his filmography is actually quite distinctive, or maybe more nuanced than what it gets credit for. I mean, those first three films are kind of their own thing, and you certainly start to see the swings with Sisu and Darjeeling Limited, but I still think those are quite different than what you get post Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, those films kind of have their own little setting, but you start to see the formation
Darjeeling is
of
a
Wes.
lot different than Zissou.
I agree, but even tonally, in terms of the editing and writing, you start to see Wes forming who he would become later. And the animated films, I think, are also different, even though, again, tonally, editing, writing, the nucleus of Anderson is there, but visually are their own animals, pun intended.
Nice work.
And then you get to Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest and French Dispatch. And yes, those are the classic Wes Anderson dollhouse aesthetics. But to what, I forget who said this earlier, but the idea of watching every single one of these back to back, the reason I don't find them tiresome, aside from, again, there's an evolution with the first three, then Sisu, Limited, the animated films, and then what we get later on. Like, that evolution is almost enough for me. But even if I'm watching Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest, and French Dispatch back to back to back, they are so vastly different in terms of the color palette and how immersive those films are regarding Wes's directions.
I
when
guess
you
so.
consider the yellow, like the saturation of Moonrise in terms of the yellow and brown hues is so distinctly and vividly different than the pink and brighter hues of Grand Budapest or the blue hues of the French Dispatch. So the nucleus of Wes might be the same in all of those, but the color palette is different. The stories and the characters are their own thing. Then you add in the humor of it all, is you're talking about there, Ryan, or the sincerity of a lot of these films. I do love the sleight of hand or the balancing act, if you will, of how he's able to, offer a lot of humor, but also make them sincere and poignant, and also thematically very rich. And to me, that's what I love about Wes. There is a quirkiness to him for sure, and perhaps that will leave some disengaged, I guess, but I love it. To me, like I from film to film, the DNA of who he is there, but I think the nuances, the gray areas are so wildly different that makes him fascinating to me. So to me, watching a Wes Anderson film is no different than a Scorsese or Tarantino or Nolan, and how I know that I'm watching those guys, but it's not always the same. And I think Wes should get more credit for that.
Yeah. And some of his films have an intensity to them that others don't, right? I feel like there's also another joke at some point. You're probably going to see some animal cruelty of some sort in his movies. But it doesn't always happen. When it does, sometimes it's just treated differently. Like let's say, for instance, the two examples I can think of is the one moment from Moonrise Kingdom as opposed to much of Isle of Dogs, right?
And
like,
this is I'm gonna dig into why I don't like that movie when you talk about this specific scene.
For Moonrise Kingdom,
a
right?
microcosm of Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah. I think that leads to some of the biggest problems I have with the movie as far as it, tonally speaking, and just how
it feels like it's weightless.
Well,
It
and
feels
also
like you're playing with action figures to me.
It feels too tonally confused, I think, and that's also, I think, where the overwhelming cast kind of coincidentally overwhelms the movie a little bit. But the way that some of that violence is treated in a movie like Isle of Dogs, there's a playfulness to it. Like when you watch the sushi scene, for instance, it doesn't kind of make you feel a little disgusted. Which again, maybe that's the feeling that Moonrise Kingdom wanted you to get. But I think I think it's more emblematic of that film's overall sense of confusion for me, whereas other films I think have a better handle on that.
Yeah, I mean, he kills the dog in Royal Tenenbaums with the car.
Yeah,
leads to that pretty poignant scene.
Heavier
that feels rightfully heavy.
There's the cat being thrown out the window in Grand Budapest Hotel. At the end of,
I love Moonrise. It's my number 3 Wes.
Yeah.
I love it all.
Moonrise, I will say that one moved down a little bit for me. I don't think it's not nearly as. I mean, that movie holds a special place in my heart because of.
I like the treehouse gag in the beginning.
My wife
that was really funny.
Seen that, I think, twice during the summer, and
that one to me,
college and everything. But like it's, there's something about that one when you watch it with the rest of them. It does. There was a little bit of unevenness from the other ones, because I guess coming off the high of Fantastic Mr. Fox and then after that's Grand Budapest, and those two are just impeccable movies. And it's not to say that I don't dislike Moonrise Kingdom. I like it more than you two, and I'm not as much as
I actually still like the movie. Yeah, I mean I have it low on my list, but it's probably one I'd still give like a solid, I don't know, 6.5 out of 10 or something like that.
But I think that like that movie is it's about these two kids. It's very simple, and it's just about these two kids
that's the problem. Wes Anderson should not make movies starring kids. Because
well, he has a lot of kids in his movies. I mean,
he does have a lot of kids in his movies, but when you make the kids the main characters and they are spouting off that Wes Anderson dialogue, it just is very grating to me.
I don't know. He had that that Lucas Hedges. That Lucas Hedges pretty good.
Works for me.
Yeah, my favorite moment of those two kids from Moonrise Kingdom is the cameo they both made in, what was that, the Jim Jarmusch film Patterson with Adam Driver on the bus. That moment, and as someone that doesn't love Moonrise Kingdom as much as you, JD, or maybe even you, Ryan, I think the movie's still pretty good, but I love that scene because it's almost like this weird meta commentary on the film.
Also, that kid's a heck. I don't remember what his name is, but the boy's a heck of a follow on Twitter. He's
a poster for sure. But that movie for me, and there is definitely merit to it. I think it's visually very accomplished. But in my opinion, making it about children, where he is half aware that you can't be quite as emotionally extreme as he is at his best, in my opinion. I think for me it really sands down that movie, in my opinion. It's one that I just don't I should give it another watch. I watched it a couple times, but it's just one that really doesn't work for me. What I love so much about my favorite Wes Anderson, which is Royal Tenenbaums, is it is at that inflection point where you have this kind of 90s grit, and then you have the Zissou dollhouse aesthetic, to put it too generally, but that is the swing point where you talk about some of those dog scenes, or the scene in the Moonrise Kingdom where he gets shot with an arrow, I think.
It's an arrow.
And that to me is just like it's played with so much whimsy
It's
that
empty calories.
It just
is what you
doesn't
think.
play for me.
Yeah.
And then, but I think back to the Royal Tenenbaums when Luke Wilson is slitting his wrists in the bathroom, and I find that absolutely devastating, especially in the context of that movie, and just generally how emotionally powerful I find that film, because it is, to me, it's kind of this swing point where it is as much concerned with the emotional consequences of the film itself as well as the really stylish aesthetic and specific aesthetic. And also doesn't hurt that you have Gene Hackman in this really incredible performance,
hell of a cast.
as Royal Tenenbaum himself. I mean, that whole cast is really amazing, but also every single member of that cast is so well defined, whereas in some later Wes films, which I really like basically all films, but it can start to feel kind of like just a merry-go-round of famous people. And I think in Royal Tenenbaums, it's much more specific and defined. And that's why I love that movie so much. And I understand people pushing back on that because there's nothing wrong with getting a bunch of great actors in your cast and putting them on a screen. But to me, that separates, for me, Tenenbaums is like a head above all of his other movies for those reasons.
I will agree that there is this merry-go-round like vibe with regard to his characters, and that's even represented literally in a movie like The French Dispatch. Although I think it works in that movie because that's kind of the point, because it's an
anthology film.
Yeah, it is meant to come and go like that, but it also works in some of his animated movies. You know, a movie like I Love Dogs is a stacked cast, but because it is animated, it almost doesn't matter who the cast is. So the cast, it becomes kind of like the secondary joke, but at times maybe the cast could overwhelm a little bit. I feel that way about Moonrise Kingdom. That's another film I feel like the cast does kind of overwhelm a little bit. But you're right, Jay. With regard to Royal Tenenbaums, that is a deeply empathetic movie. And it's a beautiful movie for those reasons. It's easily top 3 West for me. In fact, JD, I know you and I are pretty known for doing these year back retrospectives, and I think next on our list we're going to keep doing them in this new format. We have the year 2001 next, right? And that's the year of the Royal Tenenbaum. So
is that the one, JD, that you were saying was kind of like a big turning point for you? Was it Tenenbaums or was it something else?
I mean, it
Or
would
just
have
him in
started
general?
just kind of him in general. I don't think Tenenbaums was the first. I think Rushmore was my first entry into Anderson.
okay.
But Rushmore and even Bottle Rocket, I don't think connected with me in the same ways they do now until later. Tenenbaums was really the first one, and then even I guess getting into college with Fantastic Mr. Fox when that came out, and then kind of revisiting a bunch of his films kind of leading up to that is when that process started to begin, but especially with the Royal Tenenbaums, because to me that's an all-time film. That's in my top 50 of all time. I think
really
it is
good. Really good.
100%. Yeah.
Such
Yeah.
a good movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I
that's
think-
probably, it's
It's been a
probably,
rough year, Dad.
Oh my gosh. I know it has, Chazzy.
I mean, come on.
That
Don't
killer
do it.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And I, as much as I love Wes now, and I will absolutely champion everything else on his resume. I mean, I thought The French Dispatch was one of the most underrated movies of 2021. I absolutely adored that film.
It's very good.
I thought it was great. It was in my top 20 of that year. Isle of Dogs.
Benicio
I think it's very good.
is
That's so good.
A.
I'm the one that, I mean, I love that segment. I don't particularly hate the Chalamet one, but I know it's like
The Jeffrey Wright one is really good too. I mean, those
the
are-
Jeffrey Wright one for
Wright
me
should have been
is-
nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
whole sequence is incredible.
Yeah, that movie is good. I will, I'll go to bat for Moonrise Kingdom. I very much disagree with you guys. I think that is a fascinating and compelling film. I was moved by it. Arguably, the best score from a Wes Anderson film comes from Moonrise Kingdom with Desplaux's work there. But the Royal Tenenbaums is this fascinating concoction of the Wes Anderson aesthetic, but emotionally, there's a maturity and a complexity to it that is isn't quite there in all of his other movies, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. I love the rest of his movies, but it certainly elevates Royal to a new stratosphere for me, for sure. And I do agree with a lot of what you're saying there, Jay, even though I certainly have nothing against him casting everyone in Hollywood in every single one of his movies.
Makes for a great joke in the trailer.
It makes for a great joke, and honestly, I think he does such a fun job of making them playful and working for his movies, even if, you have A-list actor in a small bit role that lasts 3.5 seconds, but he somehow makes it work. But the Royal Tenenbaums is more confined, and everyone has a purpose, and it all kind of coalesces into this magical movie about family and Royal just wanting to get back to his family despite his past and his mistakes. So it's a special movie and certainly sits above the rest for me. But
I figured out who Wes Anderson is. He is the reverse Terrence Malick. Because Terrence Malick will hire everybody in the sun and then won't tell them that they're in the movie. And Wes Anderson will find a way to put them in for a second and a half.
I mean, so many people in Wes Anderson movies probably don't even know they're in the movie until the movie comes
Adrian
out.
Brody hates Terrence Malick. He loves Wes Anderson.
Exactly.
Because it guarantees him a spot in the movie.
I mean, Saoirse Ronan was in The French Dispatch for 5 seconds. And she's on the poster. And you're like, she ain't even doing it in that movie. You know what I mean? So
that's the fun of Wes.
But no, I mean, I'm also the champion. I think the Grand Budapest Hotel is
that's great.
An
great.
Incredible movie. I think that what's interesting about Budapest and Royal Tenenbaums is the fact that those, commercially speaking, as well as also awards wise speaking too, were the ones that hit the most. I mean, Grand Budapest, that was nominated for what I think 11 Oscars or something like that, and he was nominated for director, and it won I think 3 or 4. And
that is the one. I think if you took a poll of people
that's
on the street,
that's the most popular one.
I think
for sure.
Budapest would be the most popular choice for favorite West.
I think at the very least, that's my number 2. But I think a fun exercise is looking at Wes Anderson's work alongside Alexander Desplat. What's the best scored Wes Anderson film? And I know Jay, or JD rather, you already talked about which one you like, but I think Grand Budapest Hotel is probably my favorite.
Just great.
Yeah, the musicality is so
wonderful.
I gotta tell you the maybe it's not my favorite score, but definitely the drum sequences in Isle of Dogs.
That's up there too.
Yeah, those are good.
Really,
and for
really
me,
good
the Tenenbaums, I know it's a lot of needle drops, but those needle drops,
he is
so
really
effective.
They're
we
very
don't talk
purposeful.
enough about
they don't call
how
attention to themselves too much.
He's really good.
I listen
at
to
needle
a lot
drops.
of the songs that are in the Royal Tenenbaums regularly. Needle in the Hay, which again that Luke Wilson scene in the bathroom it is ingrained in my brain, as well as the Gwyneth Paltrow. Is it Gwyneth Paltrow? Yes.
It's Gwyneth Paltrow.
And when she's walking off the bus.
Oh yeah.
And who is that?
The Stones
artist? No, it's the woman who did some songs with. Who was it? Did she do songs with the Velvet Underground?
Nico, is that who you're thinking of?
Yes, Nico.
Yeah.
It's Nico. And that song I think is so beautiful and so powerful in that moment. As well as several others, but certainly when he gets with Desplat. But that's the transition, right? It's that 90s to New West, because the 90s with Tarantino had become so much about
needle drops.
Because I mean, it's just Tarantino. Bottle Rocket is very much Reservoir Dogs runoff. It's
it's like his version.
And you know what Wes Anderson cites as one of his favorite movies that he tries to kind of grab stuff from. Heat.
I was like,
where are those thumbs going?
It's in my
balance
there. I couldn't figure out which hand it was.
I would have loved it if it was Apocalypse Now, and I'm like,
I was half waiting to see you fall out of your chair or something.
Wes Anderson cites Heat as one of the movies that has most influenced him, and when you kind of look at his filmography, there's a lot of heist adjacent things going on, and I think he has that, and I think he really appreciates the control that Michael Mann has in a really different way.
Sure.
that Anderson also has kind of in his oeuvre.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also just, I mean, he, like I said, I think he's really underrated in terms of when we talk about people with great needle drops. I mean, obviously, you talk about Tarantino or Scorsese or other people, but watching his movies, they were effective and they weren't overused a lot. But then he works with Desplat, and I mean, like his stuff, obviously, like I think like Fantastic Mr. Fox is kind of like the perfect mix of having this great score and then having good needle drops that go with it. That's like to me the ultimate marriage of music in his films, and because they fit so perfectly, those needle drops. And but then
but they're not obvious. They're slightly deeper cuts.
They work.
Yeah.
That'd be a great topic to discuss, whether it be in a top 3 list or something. Who are the best needle droppers? Not the best needle drops in movies necessarily, but which directors are the best at utilizing them over the course
most effectively.
Yeah, because many directors who use them, it's kind of part of their
probably a really
DNA.
bad doctor.
That's a good question. You got me. Got my gears turning now.
Can I just state
Thank you for
that,
laughing at that joke, Brendan.
I think what's so fascinating about Wes Anderson, because when you bring up the name, the first thing that people are always going to go to is the dollhouse aesthetic and the coloration of his films, perhaps the elongated cast that he has in them. Those will always be the first things people go to. And I think what we're talking about right now is so underrated, and to me what makes him such a master, because he does not forego audio. Like the audio in his films, whether you're talking about the sound mixing or the sound design themselves, which is another thing we can get into, or the soundtracks and the scores, like there so many of these films that we're talking about, the scores are so memorable, and they're some of the best of the years in which they come out. And I love that about, like, we could have a whole conversation just on the music from these films, which is like 13th on the list of the first thing that comes to mind for people. And yet I think there's an argument to be made. They're some of the best things about his movies.
He surrounds himself with astoundingly talented people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
cinematographers, sound designers, writers, and on down the line.
Yep.
I always think like he's making a movie every 5 seconds because it feels like
he's very quick.
He's very quick, but then it's like, he's actually like making it every 3 or 4 years. I know that he's making this one now. Well, I mean,
doesn't he have another one coming out this year?
I think he does have another one this year. Right?
It's a short film, isn't it?
Or a bunch of shorts.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like 30-something minutes long.
Yeah, they have and then he's working on his next film already. But a lot of this is because French Dispatch got pushed back because of the pandemic and stuff. That was supposed to come out 2020. So I mean, technically, it would be a 3-year gap, and that's what I like about it too. It's like, everybody always complains about the aesthetic, and it's like, well, it's not like it's every 6 months he's forcing one of these things down your throat. You know what I mean? It's not like
he's averaging like every other year, right? He's
averaging like every 3 years.
Was what 95, 96, and he's made 12 movies. So he's at like one every 2 years, and that's slowed down over time.
Yeah. I mean, because Isle of Dogs was 2018, 15 is 14, 15 is Budapest, 12 is Moonrise, 09 is
look at this guy spouting off years.
This is impressive.
07 is Darjeeling Limited, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I can keep it going.
2001, 98, 96. Yeah. Who knows what was for that?
Get that little dirt off my shoulder. Just do a little Luke Skywalker right there.
He's been averaging about every other year.
Yeah, every 2
years. Not too far off from some other filmmakers.
Well, no, but then like everyone thinks he's oversaturating the market, and it's like, no, he's not. Like, you can have one of these every 2 years or 3 years. It's perfectly fine. It's healthy for the diet.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that he puts them mostly in the summer, and they're good counter programming to the things that are out right now. Because Lord knows, after listening to Brendan and JD, we need some counter programming after The Flash. and
And
so,
I'm not the cynical
Oh,
one.
well, we need to do this too. What superhero movie should Wes Anderson direct?
Oh, that's right. We haven't. Yeah,
This
Well,
this the
after
new
our
segment
it should have
on
been the
InSession
Flash.
Film.
It should have been the
Squirrel
Flash.
Girl. Honestly, the Squirrel Girl. That seems
Squirrel-
perfect.
oh,
for,
yeah,
for
no,
him.
that
Squirrel
Because
Girl,
they're
yeah.
a very
Yeah.
whimsical kind of character, right? But
How
with
about a
deep
spin-off
emotion.
on Rocket? I would do that.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Like that,
Yeah,
like an
that's actually not a
animated.
bad idea.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What else could he do?
Terrence Malick should do the Groot origin story.
I was gonna say
Please.
the tree planet everywhere. Oh my god!
Oh,
no,
I
he
cannot
should
wait
really
to
do-
see.
you
I,
imagine?
yeah,
Terrence
like,
Malick
I
should
am
do
Groot in the
a-
form of prayer.
Yeah, I think Terrence Malick should do
Exactly.
a Star Wars
I
prequel
want
about
that done.
Chewbacca and be on Kashyyyk for 2 hours long,
Yeah.
and be like, "Oh, this interesting monologue's going over. No, I'm gonna look at the trees. I'll be right back."
Well, that's the fun thing. I think what we've come to determine here is that when actors are on a Terrence Malick set and Malick wanders off, they just find themselves on the Wes Anderson set next because
Yeah, it's like,
they have
I think
nowhere
what
else
they
to
all
also
right,
go.
I need to get paid. I need to make sure I'm gonna be
I was gonna
in
say,
the
Brendan,
movie.
the other thing
That
they're
is-
doing is checking their bank accounts while the camera's not on them. Did the
Yeah.
check clear? All right, he can do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
It's,
You know what I mean?
Man,
it's
when
so
they work with
interesting how
Malick, there's got-
not many repeat actors in Malick movies, but Wes Anderson, apparently that's a great set because it's just, oh, you need me? I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need-
Has
you need a
there ever
gaffer?
been-
Okay. You know
Has
what I
there
mean?
ever been a performance in a Wes Anderson movie that was nominated for an Oscar? Yeah, I know we talked about Jeffrey Wright that should
Right,
have.
should have been.
Was Fiennes not nominated?
No,
I don't-
Fiennes was
I don't
not
think so.
nominated.
That is
He should have been.
egregious.
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4 nominations that year for that. You could replace that entire category from 2013 with entirely new actors, and because that doesn't have Ethan Hawke from Before Midnight.
Was
or it doesn't
Hackman
have-
not nominated?
I was gonna say Hackman should have been.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hackman
was
was
not
nominated.
nominated.
I know you guys aren't the biggest fan, or at least you consider Life Aquatic as lesser, but I actually think Bill Murray's performance in that movie is one of his best.
You know who's actually
Yeah.
really
I think
good in Life
Blanchett is
Aquatic?
really good in that.
I agree.
I was gonna Blanchett's. I love Willem Dafoe in that movie. He is
Yes.
hilarious. in that
Yes.
movie.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great.
You know, when he doesn't get picked or whatever, and he's pouting right
That's
before they're
great.
about to do the raid.
Childish Willem Dafoe
Perfect.
is one of the greatest
So
things ever.
Good. So good. Defoe is perfect in that world because then he plays like the bad guy in Grand Budapest and
Yeah.
also in Fantastic Mr. Fox. He's great work with Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
Goldblum's worked with him a lot, and obviously Bill Murray.
Mhm.
Yeah, no performance
act-
yet nominated, which is to Jay's point.
Probably
very
because the Academy
insane.
doesn't know where to start.
They don't know how to classify them.
Yeah, I mean,
The Ray
but for-
Fiennes one to me is mine.
I mean,
Yeah,
if that,
that-
one
that-
wasn't
that's an
gonna
egregious
happen-
He's so there are a lot of Wes Anderson movies where it's like, who's really the central figure in this movie? Ray Fiennes
Yeah.
is the
The guy,
of Grand
yeah.
Budapest.
Well, also too, I think
So
it's
that's
the
crazy.
ensemble thing of it all too. It's like people just think of him more as ensembles, but yeah, he is the lead. And if any movie was going to do it, it's that one because that one was the most universally.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look back on it,
And then you
Alejandro
give
Gonzalez
Hackman
Iñárritu's got some
support.
Oscars from Wes
Yeah,
Anderson.
come on.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did Grand Budapest win anything at the Oscars?
Yeah, it
Score.
won like 3.
Score?
It won,
Okay.
it
I
won
think
3.
Screenplay? Did it win screenplay?
Nope, that went to Birdman. Remember,
It did?
Birdman
Just
won
get some,
director
just got
picture.
some technicals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Look, hang on. This is wonderful podcasting.
As we look this up.
Man,
looked
I
this
just
up.
assumed it won screenplay because
It won
should have
4
screenplay.
Oscars.
I just assumed
it won
Ryan
4
knew the answer off
Oscars.
the top of his head.
So costume design,
Yep.
makeup and hairstyling,
Production design.
score, and production design. Yeah.
Score and production design. That is absolutely
Okay.
correct. Yes, and
Okay.
then it
Go
lost
Despois.
director, picture,
So just the
cinematography,
pure
and
aesthetic stuff.
it lost pretty much everything else to Birdman. So
Yeah.
That's a
'Cause
shame.
that was
Now
that
I
whole.
did-
I should rewatch
Birdman.
Birdman.
Yeah,
I still
too.
like it. I still like it. When
Which-
JD and I did our revisited retrospective on the year 2014, I think it was. Yeah,
That was
I
peak
liked it.
Single J, and I was all over that movie.
Yeah, I did like the movie a little bit less when I gave it a rewatch that time,
Yeah.
but I still really enjoyed it. Yeah, I still think
I
still think it's
loved
good.
it then. I love it now, and I love it even more now that Keaton has done the Flash. It's so much better now.
Who did
you know,
Keaton
the thing about it
lose
is
his Oscar for Spotlight to? Was that
he didn't get
No,
nominated
Leto?
for Spotlight. He didn't get nominated for Spotlight.
Oh no, it was for Birdman. He lost to
Yeah.
No, he
lost to Eddie Redmayne.
McConaughey?
No, he lost to Eddie.
Oh yeah, that was the Redmayne.
He
yeah.
lost to Eddie
Oh,
Redmayne
God.
for The Theory of Everything.
We forgot about that movie.
Yeah.
It really should
That
be
was-
called The Theory of Nothing.
The theory of we forgot about it.
And supporting actor was J.K. Simmons for Whiplash.
Oh, yeah,
that year.
Whiplash.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
Well,
was
that was
I don't
always
mind
going to be
that.
the case.
a no-brainer.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
So, but
Okay.
but no,
But yeah, Wes Anderson, good at his job.
Good at his
Symmetrical
job.
at his
Hopefully-
job. Consistent
Good
at
at
his
his
job.
job.
the
Yeah.
thing about him
All right, so
also too
everybody
is he
round,
makes
round
his
the
movie.
horn. Favorite Wes
Oh,
Royal.
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 Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Three Royals,
Three Royals and a
Fantastic
Fox.
Mr.
Three Royals and a Fox.
Royals and a Fox.
Royale
That
with
is
That
the
sounds
name
like
of
a
our
great name
band.
for a podcast or a band or something.
That's the
Three
name of our
Royals
band.
and a Fox.
These-
everything's in the middle.
I almost
love
said
it.
Grand Budapest. You could have said Three Royals in Budapest or something, but I actually weirdly Three Royals.
Three
and a
Royals
Fox
in Budapest.
works.
That sounds
The-
like
Three
a great
Royals and a
album.
Fox. That is a cool
I
name.
like
I gotta write
it.
that down. I gotta
It
write
is
that
good.
down.
It's good.
Look out for
It's very good.
the InSession Film Band coming soon. The name of our first album will be The Debut Was
Royals
Good,
and
but
a
I'm
Fox.
looking forward to what they have next.
Oh yes. Oh, the band. Honestly, that's a good name for a first record. Oh my God.
Isn't it? It's so better.
You're
It's
writing
perfect.
Rolling Stones article essay as you release the album.
First hit
If
single.
only-
First hit single. I'll always worry about you. That's the deal.
I love it.
If
I think we're onto
if
something here.
only people listen to albums anymore.
Yeah, they don't. I know it's unfortunate. All right, guys, let's once again talk about great coffee because we all need it in our lives.
This
especially
is filled with coffee right now.
Love
I'm drinking this at 11:30 p.m. Just
as
just so
one
you-
should. When you're talking
It's,
about
it's
Wes
actually water.
Anderson,
It's actually water, but to be
That's
fair,
a
I mean,
lie.
I do love
It's
good
straight
coffee.
espresso.
One man's water is another man's coffee.
It-
you go.
oh, there's a
you go.
bumper sticker right there.
well, we want to talk about coffee because Coffee Cult has amazing specialty grade coffee. That is
Yes.
all they source from over 50 countries around the world. And again, it's all about the quality. They don't use any sort of lesser grade beans. They don't use defected beans. A lot of coffee companies will use Robusta beans or they'll use broken beans to cheapen it, make it more accessible. But it's also absolutely awful coffee. And that's not what Coffee Cult is about.
Nope.
Additionally to that, it's all ethically sourced. One of the big things for them is that they only work with farms that pay their workers fairly and equally, especially the women.
Yep.
One of the best things about them, no one else really does this. They roast to order, so there's no stale coffee.
Yep.
When you walk into a grocery store and there's coffee sitting on your shelves, God knows when that was roasted. It certainly isn't fresh.
So
it's not a
gross.
few days old.
You can sometimes smell it through the aisles, and it just smells like
Yeah.
it's. They smell like air fresheners sometimes.
Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about that with Coffee Cult. They roast to order. So if you go to coffeecult.com, you place your order. That's when it gets into the system, and that's when things are roasted. And it's shipped to you within 2 days. So it is super fresh every single time.
Oh, yeah.
They have tons of single origin varieties. They have different blends depending on what you like.
Sumatra. Go with the
The
Sumatra.
Sumatra is amazing. I love
Yeah.
the Sumatra. One of my favorites is the Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, which has
Okay.
these like peachy notes. These like really
Yirgacheffe. It
fruity
sounds like
notes.
the name of the next Mission Impossible villain.
Maybe it will be.
I'm
my
going to
gosh.
stop you, Tom Cruise.
Is
Yirgacheffe.
Coffee Cult a sponsor of Dead Reckoning?
Maybe it should.
Did they just
We'll have
name
to
the
look
new
into
bad
that.
guy?
Yeah. But at any rate, be sure to go and check out one of those varieties. Go to coffeecult.com. That's coffee with a K, cult with a K. Coffeecult.com. Use our code ISF and you'll get 15% off. That's code ISF. You'll get 50 or if you spend over $50, it's free shipping as well in the United States. So wanted to throw that out there. Again, coffeecult.com. Use the code ISF and get 15% off. The InSession Film Podcast is brought to you by our great friends over at First Time Watchers. And, right now we're talking about Wes Anderson. And I got to say, like Wes Anderson, the guys over at First Time Watchers, certainly unique. They have a distinct style, and you won't forget what you're listening to.
They're very symmetrical. That's what
They love wearing pastels.
they
Of
love.
course they do, yes.
They
What
play
a
with
bunch
dolls.
of fantastic foxes over there. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, they have a very foxy knowledge of movies, which is why you have to check them out. They're a great supporter of our show. Walter, Tim, and Hermano, they know their movies.
They do know their movies. On their latest episode, they had a wonderful guest. Some of you might know him. His name is Dave Giannini. He's our editor-in-chief over
Paddington
at
hater, never heard of him.
Don't like them.
He joined the guys to talk about Moneyball. Moneyball's a
wow.
good movie, guys.
Dave talked about a
really
good
good.
movie. Oh,
They did.
wow.
Yeah.
The first time watchers talked about a movie that everyone's heard of.
Exactly. They finally, they caved in and decided to talk about something we all know.
They pivoted
Yeah.
right before the end.
Oh,
Right
yeah,
before the
episode
end.
494, I think they're on.
Oh,
Right
the
before they
internet
hit
got to
500
them.
and call it
Yeah.
quits. If for those of you listening, if you're a first time listener of us and you're hearing us talk about the first time watchers for the first time, normally they pick out really unique oddball films you might not have heard of. So the fact that they're talking about a movie like Moneyball is actually kind of a rarity. But they still had a great discussion on it. They pick out movies that they've either never seen or catching up with maybe only a second time. So it really has a fresh, unique, new perspective on these films that you may or may not have heard of. Also discussing other movies that they've caught up with and maybe some new movie trailers that are worth noting as well.
Yeah, they give out some great recommendations at the end of the show, and overall, it's very smart. It is worth your money, ball, so to speak. So with that
It's
said,
worth your
Brendan,
balls of money.
where can you find them on the internet?
Got a high on base percentage.
That's a good one. That's a good one. You can increase that percentage by finding them at firsttimewatchers.podbean.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at First Time Watchers and on Facebook by simply searching First Time Watchers.
And go subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We encourage you to leave a review as well. Let them know how much you love them. At the end of your review, we ask that you leave a little hashtag so they know we sent you to them. And this week, what do you think? We should go with the hashtag
FTW is money.
show me the money.
FTW, show me the money balls.
How can you not be romantic about first time watchers?
There you go. I like
Long
it.
hashtag, but it's appropriate.
Very appropriate. Yeah, leave that hashtag. Go check them out. We promise you'll love them. Again, that's First Time Watchers. We're going to make a hard right turn here, and there's going to be a ton of irony because there's going to be no InSession Film Band, it turns out. Because we do have an announcement to make here, and it's a bittersweet one. This is going to be the last show that Ryan and Jay will be on as co-hosts of the InSession Film Podcast. They are moving on to greener pastures, as they say. And it's a little... I'm getting quite emotional thinking about it, so let's just try to keep this together here. Ryan and Jay have been
Really
with
keeping
us
it
since-
together emotionally? Wow.
Yeah,
Buckle
yeah,
up, kid.
I'm about to lose it, so let's just try to keep
Hashtag
this together.
JD tears indeed. Oh man, yeah.
So Ryan and Jay came on in 2018, like midway through the year, I believe, and have been here since then. For those that have been longtime listeners, you'll know they held down the fort over at Extra Film and did such a tremendous job over there. And then we decided to completely switch things up at the beginning of this year and start doing some video and restructuring the podcast and everything. And it's been a hell of a ride, but things are going to be changing here a little bit as Ryan is he's pretty much leaving for good. He has a lot on his plate, and there's some family stuff as well that he needs to focus on. So
Yeah.
with all the love in my heart, I cannot thank you guys enough for being a part of the show, and for all the work that you guys have done over the years. And I still look forward to collaborating. You guys will definitely be back on. Jay will especially be on a little bit more than Ryan as we go, even if this is the end of your official tenure here as co-host. But I just wanted to thank you guys. This has been a hell of a run. And I just kind of wanted to spend the rest of our time here kind of reflecting on the last, 5.5 years that we've been doing this.
Yeah.
6 years? I don't know. I'm bad
That's
at math,
five-ish.
especially when I'm.
I mean, yeah. If you count maybe other
5
guest
and
appearances,
change.
yeah,
Five and change.
maybe there were some guest appearances that I'm forgetting that came before the official indoctrination of Ryan and Jay into the InSession Film brand.
Oh,
if
for
you
sure.
will.
Yeah.
But I still remember some of those episodes that really made JD and I think we got to bring these guys on more permanently and then make it permanent. I think more specifically, I think of our review with you, Ryan, on Mission Impossible Fallout. Was it?
Yes.
Yeah. That conversation was like, yep, let's get this guy. Let's get this guy.
Let's get
here.
the bongos out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is really sad. I'm not gonna lie. This is not an easy decision. We had for everybody that loves inside baseball. Behind the scenes, we've kind of talked about this already with everybody, but there was just some opportunities that myself along with Jay couldn't pass up, and it does not mean that we are taking this lightly. This is a very hard decision. It's a decision that, I mean, I wouldn't be in the positions I'm at anywhere else and be able to have this quote unquote busy schedule, and gone to all the things and met all the people that I've met if it wasn't for InSession Film. I remember I was doing my own shtick on the podcast that doesn't exist. The audio's been destroyed and put in the it's like
The Disney
ending
Vault.
Yeah, it's been like I'm more like the ending
what
of
was your
Citizen
first
Kane.
one called? I can't remember. What was it called?
What should have won? It was an Oscar
Yes,
show.
that's what it was.
Oh yeah, I
And it
do
was-
remember that.
And it was
Was
terrible.
Was this post and the runner-up or was this were they running
I think they were
simultaneous?
almost running adjacent, but like it was like right
That's
before Kevin
hilarious.
started that show. So thank God we didn't
Oh,
have
you
to
had it
compete in that
first.
lane. Yeah. I think. I mean, again, that show has no record, and Kevin Jacobson does a marvelous
watch out.
job at it.
Yeah.
Lawyers are coming.
Lawyers, oh God,
You,
they're knocking at the door.
Ryan, you've had a lot of podcast ventures that, whether they were before or after or even during InSession Film, that are you were a busy man.
I'm telling you.
I forgot. Busting the Block was one you were doing as
The
well.
man
Listen,
is
none of
a- the
these
man
were
is a
my
golf
fault.
horse.
All right, none of these were my fault. Some of them were completely other people's fault, but we don't need to get into that. I had JD on, like I had a couple other people on, but I had JD on for of all films, Avengers, Infinity War.
Yeah.
Who would have thought a Marvel movie would have brought us together? But
Brings everyone together.
but
Love
And
that.
now
I,
has
it
torn
was
us
it was
apart.
great because like we had like a
That's
good,
why Ryan's leaving.
yeah, that's where I'm like, MCU's I killed it and now I can move on. Have you seen the box office returns on Ant-Man? I'm good to go. Anyway,
He's doing better than the Flash.
that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Flash is
Oh.
doing worse than Black Adam.
Yeah,
That is crazy.
that says a lot. But anyway, I remember talking with JD, and I remember that being such a great experience. He invited me on, and I was so nervous that first night. And then I got on the Skype, and JD wasn't even there. It was Brendan. So that threw me off completely. If you go back and listen to that first episode, I think we talked about Set It Up and another Netflix romantic comedy or something like that. And I sound like an idiot on those things. I mean, it is terrible the way I sound.
Us growing as critics, that's character development right there.
Yeah, I was really tense. But then, I mean, everybody knows this, but like weirdly I got invited on by the man in the square next to me over here, whatever.
Oh,
I don't know. Down.
this
yeah,
one,
yeah.
The guy with the posters.
Anyway, the guy with the posters over here. There we go.
He figured it out.
Finally figured it out. I figured out how.
Make the L's with your hands.
Sorry, I haven't watched Tenet enough to
And
figure
Heat
out
is over
temporal
here.
principality.
Yeah, back there somewhere around here. Yeah.
And we talked about Tarantino for like 9 hours, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that JD was actually bringing him on, and then it kind of just made sense. And then I think
It's
for
kind
like
of a blur
the
to me.
first,
I don't even remember exactly how I was brought on, but
I remember like the first 6 months, Jay and I doing extra film, and we had to really like figure each other out while we were doing it, because it, and because it wasn't just me being a guest on his show and talking about Tarantino. Like we actually had to work together. And I felt like at times like Jay hated me because I just didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know like the kinds of movie, and it was always like a coin flip every week early on, because one week he liked something off the beaten path and next week he liked this. And what's weird is over time, I think we started liking more and more things together because
I
we
think that is
hung
certainly
out.
true, and I think JD and Brendan can speak to that as well. where
Yeah,
your
you guys can
tastes
speak to
start
that. You
kinda
guys
merge.
It's you kind of become one hive mind when you start doing it. And then
Might as well call us JD Cassidy.
yeah, exactly.
Well, either that or really
Brendan
what it
Duran.
really became was we had such good conversations that we came to more similar conclusions, because we
Yeah.
became more eloquent and kind of more convincing in the way that we
Yes,
talk
I
about
did.
movies.
Yes,
Well, and when you start to
It took you a while, but you got
understand,
there.
I know. I was a slow learner. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, when you talk to someone for a certain amount of time, you start to see how they look at the world, and
Yeah.
specifically through the lens of cinema. So when you start watching movies, those things come to mind. I'm trying to remember specifics, but I know that Brendan and I have certainly had conversations where I've revealed when watching a movie that was definitely a Brendan thing, and he's going to love that. And I know that he's going to bring that up when we talk about it on the show.
Even if we don't agree, it's like, what
you
points that
sense it.
someone's going to
Yeah.
focus on. And then it kind of just formulates how you phrase the conversation. It's called, I say this word a lot, but it's called camaraderie. And that's necessary for a podcast.
Yeah.
It always is.
But I think about, I have grown as a writer, I've grown as a podcaster. I got married in my time here. I went from a boy to a man.
From
And
a boy to a man.
Boy to a dude.
But,
Well,
to a
and
dude.
can we actually talk about that, because I know that we're talking about Ryan and Jay's time here on the show.
Yeah.
But Ryan, did you come? It was either simultaneously or along the same time frame. Ryan decided, or he came to me and said, "Is anyone running the website? Because I would like to take that up." And I said,
yeah.
"Go for it, because that's time off my hands."
Well, first off, it was
JD pulled the
Has- is
pistol away
anyone-
from his forehead. And
Yeah, this is when
the privilege to run the website.
Well, no,
Yeah.
first, I mean,
Yep.
JD, first it was, is anyone doing an Oscar show? Because Chasing
There
the
was
Gold
that
became
too.
a thing.
Chasing the
Oh,
gold
yeah,
became a
there was.
thing.
And then, I mean, I was writing at the same time in 2018, 2019. I was writing at award circuit at the time. And then when the site went under, I was like, well, I have more time on my hands now because I don't have stressful deadlines to meet. And then that's when you were like, I was like, what if we see, as Nick Fury would say, we had an idea.
We had an idea. Yes.
And the idea was to assemble a team of writers of all colors, creeds, and kinds to come together and do. I really am.
It was
doing
called
Avengers
the
Week.
InSessioners Initiative.
Exactly. And but honestly, I'm so proud of the site because it's it's taken a long time, but it's there's a term in sports that a lot of people say is that like you want to leave a place better than which you found it. A lot of a lot of athletes say like I left the organization better than which it was before I came here. And like I truly can say that about the website because it's JD, and this is a lot to JD's credit. It's also a lot of credit to Dave Giannini, our editor in chief now at the site, who has full reigning control. So if any issues happen, you know who to blame. And Dave will say yes, correct.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, it was all the three of us working together. The site, the way it looks now, the staff that's there, the committed staff. I mean, we've had people go to festivals. We're on a poster. We had a pull quote on a poster for French Exit for Alessandra. We've grown, and the staff is like 30 people. And there's now, and I mean, of that, it becomes the Women in Session podcast and stuff like that too.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
there's tons of things that have come from it. You know, even Christian Eulenberg's appearances, that have been with you, JD, about recapping stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of great things that have come from it. And I'm truly, and there's a lot of staff that aren't here anymore than which they started. It's not that we got rid of them or anything. It's just life. It happens.
Just
and
things
a
happen.
lot of people are doing this because they love movies. We don't, we sadly can't pay everyone or pay anyone for that mind. And so we're all doing this out of the love of movies here. And so many people put the time and effort, go to their screenings. They get these reviews out. They're so many talented people on the site. So I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I have all three of you. I know that I'm leaving and focusing on all my, I'm not dying or anything out there, folks. Like I'm not like, they're not going to
He's
push
abandoning us.
me out
He's
to light me out
abandoning
on-
us. So like I am so mad at this. So Jay, Ryan, this is why you won't be getting a wedding invite
hell
now.
out of here. You know what I mean? No, it's that, obviously I've got a lot of stuff going on over at Awards Watch and Eric and I have just, there's a lot that is going to need to be done over the next couple of months to the rest of the year. And stuff with, like Jay said, with my family and other stuff, I have to release a little bit of the burden. It's of the stress that all this is done. It's not a burden, but just the amount of stress that all this can be. If you're running 2 websites and you're trying to write for others and you've also got a full-time day job and you also have a wife that wants to see you every now and then and a family, it's a lot. And JD's always told me that, like these are sacrifices you have to make in order to be with the people that truly matter the most, which is your family, and everything. And, but that still doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere. Every now and then I'll have a review up on the site. I'll still come back in here every now and then because there's no way you guys are getting rid of me for some reviews. Brendan talked about a Mission Impossible review from the past. Well, isn't there one coming out?
You're not invited to that one.
Get them mother frickin' bongos out. Let's go, baby.
This reckoning has already died.
We're coming to save cinemas once again. No, and JD and I have already kind of talked, but and this is a spoiler alert for everybody out there, but Jay and I still plan on trying to be back here at the end of the year for our big InSession Film extravaganza because
the award shows.
There's no damn way I'm letting these 2 guys up here on the top.
Jay's independent awards.
There's no way they're going to go back to having a normal size award show.
It's got to be a 6-hour extravaganza. Now with video.
Brendan will
so exhausting.
Brendan's already mad about the runtime right now, pulling out stopwatches, and I don't care. We'll be here for every second.
And I'm always the victor. I'm always the most one with brevity.
Yeah. And you know what?
If
I'm
I
always
only
the
get
one
you guys
saying,
for
I don't care.
If nothing else, if all else fails, because I know you guys will get busy doing other things, but if you can't be back throughout the year, that has to be, and I'm giving you 6 months heads up right now.
That's fair.
That's the one show you have to be back for.
Put it on your calendar.
Put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Come January.
Jay, you have to skip like Jet's first words or whatever. We got to be on there for
his first word is going to be retrospective.
He's done Mama Dada already. It's old.
Yeah, I was gonna, he's at that age. He should be.
He's totally. He's squawking like a bird. And
he's self-sufficient now. He's making sandwiches and putting on the tube.
Yeah. I'll say from my perspective, I'll be around a little more. I mean, it is really what it came down to for me was, it's really interesting. Ryan has been running himself ragged with this movie and podcast stuff for a while. And, he just eventually had to trim down his responsibilities. And it just so happened that he reached out to me and said, hey, I would still like to do a podcast with you over at this other place. And it's kind of in the vein of our movie series that we've done in the past at InSession Film. But I'll be more present over here. I'm really planning on ramping up some of the video content. It's really, for me, if timing was a little different, I do this all the time. However, now that I've got a 1-year-old, it's just my schedule looks different.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where I want to be, let me know what the schedule is every week. I'm not going to be able to be on, but every, month or 2 months or however it may be. But, I'm always here to help y'all out, because it has been, it's stupid to say that it's been life-changing. This podcast has been life-changing, but it really has. I mean, it is. Yeah. I think about where I was before. I had a really fun podcast that I enjoyed a lot over at Film Inquiry that we kind of grew from the ground up, and that's a great outlet, and they remain a great outlet that has a lot of readers. And from there, you just start making these relationships. And I don't even, again, totally remember how I got linked up with InSession Film at this point. But, JD reached out and said, hey, do you want to be on this podcast or this podcast? And then eventually it became, hey, do you want to do extra film? Which was one of the great joys of my life for a very long time. It was something that I looked forward to every single week. It not only provided this outlet for this thing that I love so much, but it also provided these people that I have come to love so much and mean a great deal to me. And it has been, it's been awesome. The last few years, as much as I hate those 8-hour year-end podcasts right after I finish them, I love them, in hindsight.
In the moment, it's great.
And
I never listen to them again.
It's like going through hazing, it's like the best moment, the best time of your life you'll never want to live again. But it's been just, it's been really amazing. And, I haven't had necessarily all the responsibility that Ryan has, who really grabbed this whole endeavor by the horns. And, I'm very appreciative of kind of the leeway y'all have given me as far as, you come here, you do the show, you watch your movies, and that's good enough. And that's been hugely important for me, and has become increasingly huge for me as my family has expanded. Since I started the podcast, I've bought a house, I've had a kid, countless other huge things. There was this little pandemic thing that happened in between.
Don't know what you're talking about.
It's just, you look back on kind of where
that didn't happen. That's fake news. That's
where
fake
this
news.
whole
Pandemic
experience,
it's still 2020.
Where this whole experience sits kind of in the context of my life. And you see now it's taken up, about 20% of my entire life. And that's kind of crazy to put it in context, right?
It's true.
Especially when you consider
just means you're old.
It's taken up basically over half of my life since I got out of school. So it's been a huge part of my existence, and will remain a huge part of my existence going forward. And again, I'll be around. Can't wait to continue podcasting with you guys, I think.
Yeah.
But given kind of the unusual circumstances of my schedule, it was one of those things where I had to kind of make a
balance
choice
it out.
And find a little more balance. And I still want to talk about new movies desperately with you guys. It's just I can't commit myself to anything specifically at this time. And I know I'm not going to be able to really kind of burn the candle knowing that I'm going to go forward with this show with Ryan, because we have had such a great relationship for a long time. It's just that the schedule can't kind of go the way it's going.
And that's why we get it. We often joke about JD and I kind of having the exact same brain, because we kind of do. And that's not to say that Ryan and Jay, you guys have the same brain, but a certain camaraderie and chemistry you have with a co-host on a podcast is something you just can't replicate. And if you try to replicate it, it just takes too long. And no one has the patience for that when you already know you had it at one point. And what the two of you had on what was dubbed the extra film segment back during those movie series that y'all were doing. Most notably, the director's series, I think, is really the high point of any of those.
And I think that's really when we hit our stride.
Yeah, and which is why we completely understand the need to keep the need and desire that you two want to remain close to the chest, like really tied together in some way, and we get it. And Jay, we really do appreciate that. You'll still be making some effort to help out with like the review side of things for myself and JD. But it has been real. It really has. We brought you guys on for a specific reason. We felt connected to that camaraderie as well, which is why those award shows are as long as they are, because we just can't shut up. We just like talking to each other.
Well, Ryan and JD can't shut up.
I'd like to speak 45 minutes about that. If that's
to be fair, we've been victim of it too.
We definitely have. Yeah, there was some podcast a while ago. I can't remember which one it was, where we were like, "Oh, this is going to be a 30-minute review." It ended up being like an hour,
4 hours.
Just me and Brendan, but.
Yeah, and we're known for brevity. You and I are the ones who talk faster than
or at least we like to think so. I'm not sure it's actually true, but we definitely talk about it like it is.
Yeah,
you guys definitely talk faster than me. That's for sure.
I don't know if that's good or not. I've been told I talk too fast sometimes. I got to fix that.
Yes,
I will say, thinking back on it, and I'm trying to recall the specific topic that you guys did, because was that on your old show, Jay? Ryan came on. You guys did some sort of deep dive on some director.
A 2-episode Tarantino.
Maybe that's what it was.
For a solid 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah. I remember listening to that at the time. And for context, Brendan and I, going back to 2015, but especially in 2016 and 17, we had many conversations about what we wanted to do with extra film, because as Sam was my firstborn, as he was getting older, my time was getting a little bit more constrained. And for, a lot of the same reasons Ryan and Jay are talking about with why they're leaving, like that's ultimately why I needed to step away from extra film. But I didn't want extra film to necessarily go away, because we had, at that time anyway, established an audience for that show, because it was wholly dedicated to, small films, indie films, foreign films, a lot of the stuff that we weren't talking about on the main show at that time.
And a lot of our favorite stuff.
A lot of our favorite stuff. And I had listeners reach out to me throughout those years to tell me that's almost all they listened to exclusively. Like they didn't care about the Transformers of the world. They just wanted to hear us talk about those foreign gems. So I didn't want that show to go away, even though I knew I probably couldn't do it. So we had so many conversations about how to move forward with that.
We had so many other co-hosts circulating through that.
That's right. We had Vince Leo on in 2016, I believe that was.
Yeah. Before that, Matt Neglia before he went off his own greener pastures.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Oates from Silver Screen Riot. So we had a few attempts at it, and none of it really stuck. And so once Vince left, we needed to think about how we wanted to go forward. And even with Vince or with Matt, it was still kind of a rotation. So they would kind of hold down the fort, but then Brendan and I, we would have to kind of sub in and out. So, that was certainly helpful.
Right.
And then, through the relationship building, as Jay's talking about, and I had guested on Ryan's show, and Jay, I think you had been a guest a couple of times on the show. And then I hear you guys do this deep dive on Tarantino, and to me, it sounded like a perfect match for extra film. I do remember thinking that. And so I think it was kind of off the heels of that where I was like, Brendan, I think this might be the answer.
I think we found people to talk to. We found the guys to bring on.
And then it was just a matter of pleading, getting on my knees and begging Ryan and Jay.
It was not that hard.
It wasn't until
it really wasn't.
It wasn't until the two of you talked about The Departed on Extra Film. Not even part of a Scorsese movie series. Just talked about The Departed. And that was the review where I thought, yeah, we made the right call. We made the right call. Made the right call.
Very Home
And
Companion
then we did Madeline's Madeline, and JD was like, "Is it too
This is a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, that's when the rivalry
Classic.
between Jay and JD started.
All that JD had to do to convince me to come on was I edit the podcast. I was like, where do I sign?
Yeah.
And then my other show, my old show was just like, it was kind of falling apart, meeting its end. And I was just like, well, I don't want to stop doing this. And that Jay guy seemed like a pretty decent fellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
For some reason, I don't know why this is the first one I remember, but the one that sticks out to me is Christopher Robin and Zama was a double header.
That's a heck of a double feature we did.
it was.
And
I
I was like, I was the one who was like, Christopher Robin's kind of good. What are you guys talking about?
I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then like,
And I was
we
like
did
that
Zama
one
and-
scene at the beginning where Alex Ross Perry like clearly influenced that scene. It made me cry in the movie theater, and then it was like, now let me unleash the cynical J side. Zama, ooh,
Zama.
baby.
Yeah.
I remember.
sides
Talk
of
about
Jay on that
diversity.
one.
Yeah.
I remember. Weirdly enough, I remember us talking about. I remember two. One of them was a little bit. It was in the second year, so it was in 2019. The Hellboy review, where Jay mentioned the dumpster whopper. I thought
Famous
was
dumpster
like
whopper. Yeah.
Jeez, that needs to be patented. You got to get
it
that
was-
trademark, man.
It's up there. I
I gotta
mean,
get that on a t-shirt.
I think a Little
yeah.
Woods, when we coined the phrase that JD mentioned earlier, which was it was fine. Can't wait to see
debut
what
was
they do
fine.
next.
Debut, can't wait to see what they do next.
You know, I love that. We the last
Yeah.
Greengrass movie, the July 27th or 22nd
yeah.
of July or whatever,
22nd
the
July.
shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Jay and I, we had been going a little bit back and forth. I remember I just actively did not like that movie. And we got on, I think it was 2 minutes right before we were about to start, and Jay goes, well, let's get this one over with. And I remember sitting there going, thank God, I don't want to fight you on this one. And I just remember it being very therapeutic of like releasing hellfire on this movie.
Mhm.
And just thinking what a terrible decision this was, that this movie was like made and how it was constructed and everything. And that honestly, that was a great thing because, you know, it's one thing I think when you see a movie like that or see these bad movies and they can have boring things. But what's been so great about working with Jay and even working with you, Brendan and JD, is when we're talking about one of these movies and we get so tired by the end of it, then we go down some weird rabbit hole that
No,
makes those
incorrect.
episodes unique.
Haven't done it.
Because I can't remember half the rabbit holes we've gone down, but if you put them on, I'll think of them right
The
then.
one
I'll be
that
like, oh,
makes me
that's
think
right.
of, God, what was the Tom Holland movie?
Cherry?
Jerry.
Oh, no,
No,
Chaos
that was
Walking.
Chaos Walking.
Oh,
Yeah, where
God.
I think we
Chewits?
talked about the movie for 2.5 minutes.
No, but we talked about that 2.5 because then you went down David
Yeah.
Oyelowo's IMDb
And
page.
I talked about
and
Charlie
went,
Kaufman. I mean, that was such an interesting kind of production.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was so
Robert-
wild. We
If
talked
there's any
about,
movie that warranted the rabbit hole
Zemeckis
agenda.
was involved with that one at one point.
Yeah, we talked about everything but that. And then by the end of it, we got done with the rabbit holes, and Jay and I went, yeah, it's not very good. Let's wrap this thing up. And I mean, those were always great. I remember the bonus content where I talked for like 15 minutes straight about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Jay was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not speaking tonight.
Well, I honestly think I might have. You certainly talk. If you look at as a percentage of an episode, you certainly talk more than I do. But I believe my shortcuts soliloquy was about 16 or 17 minutes.
That was the
at
that was the
opening
thing.
of
It's like
that
It
one.
was the length of the movie itself.
It was.
well, that was the thing. Is like
ridiculous.
we had the
No, that's a
Hollywood
long
thing,
movie.
but then
Yeah.
you had that. I mean, I credit Jay for our pivot. I think not being able. I mean, obviously the pandemic kind of helped that out
Yeah.
a lot
'Cause
as well.
I mean, I'm thinking back on it. I don't think that was immediately received with open arms. That
Shortcuts?
idea. No, the
Oh.
pivot to the director series. I think there
I
was
think
a
that-
little bit of pushback at first.
From me, at least.
from everyone.
Well,
I was actually
Yeah.
on board with it.
I mean, I didn't hate the idea in theory. I think my fear at that time was, we had built that audience for, a lot of these small films or these indie films that come out throughout the year.
It's really
And
crazy. We used to cover 3 new releases a week. That is
Yeah.
insane.
well, and then,
Yeah.
but
We
then
saw
2020
everything.
But honestly, the pandemic really then solved all the problems because we didn't have
You had nothing to
That
talk
literally
about.
shit
did
coming
start.
out.
That
You know
is
I
what
mean?
it was,
Like,
wasn't it?
for
Thank
half
you,
a year.
COVID. Thank you.
Our James Bond series was like 2 months before COVID.
Something like
Because
that.
we were,
yeah.
Yeah.
because we thought in 2020, or April of 2020 was when No Time to Die was supposed to come out, and we thought, oh, okay, we'll do Bond, and then
Oh God, that's right. I
we'll
forgot.
do
that's why we
bonus
did it.
content about
Oh,
No
man.
Time to Die.
That
It'll
is
be
hilarious.
great. And then we didn't see it for another year and a half. You know, so think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, and then the crazy thing is like that, all my reservations aside, I mean, those fears clearly in hindsight were unwarranted because, the movie series thing took off
Yeah.
like wildfire.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
Altman
So-
conversations,
And
those Powell
it did. I mean,
Pressburger.
it turned into the greatest movie watching years of my life,
Oh yeah.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, it was magnificent.
I mean,
Yeah.
remember when we talked about Benjamin Button?
Yeah, it rocks.
And that-
Good movie.
I mean,
Good
that
movie.
I almost cried. That was
conversation
the
was
first
great.
time I almost cried on a podcast.
A Matter of Life and Death. That was a great episode.
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
Well, that was helpful for JD and I as well because we wanted to catch up alongside these movies with y'all. I mean, we weren't joining those reviews, but there were a lot of blind spots in our own,
It's a nice excuse to
experiences.
watch
Yeah,
that stuff.
and like me watching A Matter of Life and Death by Powell and Pressburger for the first time was, I mean, thank you for choosing to do that series because I don't know, I don't know when I
Well,
would have
Jay.
gotten a chance to
Well,
catch
Jay.
up with
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Altman.
The Altman stuff. Yeah, same
Yeah,
thing.
I
fascinating.
watched 34 Altman movies in 3 months.
Much like you did with Billy Wilder, right? You watched
Billy
like-
Wilder, yeah, like 25.
Yeah. Ridley Scott, 27.
Oh, the Riddler.
The Riddler.
Oh my God, the Riddler.
That's even
Oh, but
harder because
then-
a lot of his movies are like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
but-
skipped some of those that I'd already seen.
Yeah, he wasn't
I
popping
did not
on Robin
rewatch
Hood again.
Body of Lies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or Exodus.
Oh my God, yeah.
No Exodus.
Oh. And then a little soda pop.
Little
Had
soda
Yeah,
some
pop.
soda.
Soderbergh,
some-
I mean, a
crack some
ton.
soda pops. Yeah,
Yeah.
those were great.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, it's so. That's what I love about watching film, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
discovering things that really do kind of make you look at the world a little bit differently. And no offense to new releases, I like watching new releases too, but the reality is in a given year from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, there are a dozen movies that have really sustained over a period of time. And so if you choose a dozen movies from any given year, they're probably going to be pretty great. And so
Yeah.
it's a lot more, it's kind of selective and exacting in kind of what you're watching. And I do like watching, I don't know, do I love watching movies like The Flash? I don't know. We'll see. I might love it. But, The Flash is not going to be a movie that people are doing movie series on in 30, 40 years.
No
don't-
Andy
you
Muschietti
don't
movie
know.
series.
No, I don't see that happening, but who knows? But
Yeah.
but in addition to that, all the smaller films and stuff too, and I had been watching plenty of smaller movies, but certainly not to the extent, because sometimes during a week of extra film, you'd have to dig deep and be like, okay, so this is a pretty slow week. How far are we gonna have to dig down for this one?
Yeah.
Well, I found this thing that's been streaming on
Listenership
Quibi.
be damned. We're gonna review this movie, this documentary about the Rio Grande preservation. What was that one called, Ryan? I can't remember.
The River and the Wall.
The River and the
Yeah.
Wall, of course.
People that when we looked on Letterboxd, only
Yeah.
like
It has like 80
5,000
reviews on Letterboxd or something.
yeah,
No, it was way less than 5,000. It was like
yeah, it was like
200. 200.
100. It
Yeah.
was the South by movie, and I was like, well, it seems timely. And I watched it last week, and then nobody's heard of it since.
Yeah.
No, but then I think of like I don't know. I think of like some of the stuff we did watch I remember us talking about Lawrence of Arabia, but then I also remember having Brendan on and talking about The Mask of Zorro during the pandemic. That was a lot of fun because we partnered that with GoldenEye, I believe.
Oh yeah,
and had a Martin Campbell special.
How about a little movie by the name of Aquaman?
Man,
Excuse me.
Hello.
Can't forget Aquaman.
Has the DCU ever recovered since? I don't think so.
And then the other things that are awesome are like, I was a part of the most unlistenable podcast of all time, Miami Vice, a movie I adore with all my heart and soul.
God,
no, that was the main show. That was our Michael Mann series.
So glad I was not there. And when you guys have talked about it, I love you all. I'm just going to state it up front.
I'm honestly curious. I've never listened to it. I wonder if it's actually as bad.
I remember yelling at you guys at one point.
I'm going to tell you this. I've never listened to it, and I love you all. I will never listen to it.
I don't think you need to.
We
lived it. We lived
every time
it.
I
we
pick
lived
up that
the
movie,
Miami Vice.
Every time I pick up that movie to watch about it, I think I have like you guys, like an image of you guys screaming in my ears about Jay. I love it, and JD's like, I don't, and I'm like, okay, I'm putting this movie back, and I'm gonna watch something else.
No, I've gotten in knockdown dragouts with both JD and Ryan over the years. I don't think I've ever done it with Brendan.
No, we've had some. For listeners behind the scenes, we've had some stuff that never got aired, that didn't get recorded. We re-recorded literally the next night. We were like, you know what? Tonight's not the night. Let's just put our heads on a pillow and catch up in the morning.
The one specifically I remember, Ryan, is He Got Game.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is a very good review on record.
On record.
And I don't think I've ever been as mad at you as I was during the He Got Game review.
I mean, you think you were mad? I was mad at you. We were mad at each other.
It was.
Then I'll tell you this. I was the one.
I feel like I'm not part of this club. I haven't gotten mad at anyone really.
No,
you want to start tonight?
I'm the moderate one, I guess.
I'm very mellow until suddenly I'm not anymore.
I remember. I do remember though.
I take on
a
new form.
We did have one of the most heartbreaking episodes ever, because it took so much time, which was Ace in the Hole, because the audio got screwed up, and we lost it, and we had to re-record the entire show the next night again. What
a good movie!
And what a great movie! But also, you haven't
done a podcast if you haven't experienced.
Yeah, I know.
All
right?
Podcasters. It's like part of the.
It's like you haven't really been a critic unless you go to a screening that they tell you that it's supposed to be at, and then it's a wrong theater. Had that happen to me the other week, and I'm glad I haven't had that happen. I told a friend of mine this, and they were like, "Yeah." And now for the next how many ever years you're a critic, you'll be paranoid walking through those doors, thinking, "Am I showing up to the right place? God, I hope so."
I always triple, quadruple. Sometimes I just check. All right, I will text the PR person, the rep, be like, "It's this theater, right?"
I know. Okay, because that night, Sorry, Jay.
No. I was just gonna say, truly, not. This isn't a post-mortem or anything like that. You know, it's totally not. But I do just have to say, thank both of y'all so much because. As embarrassing as it is to cry on a podcast, it's a moment.
It happened.
That,
great moment.
Makes you discover more about yourself and what you guys have allowed us to do by being on this podcast is discover more about ourselves as well as develop these great friendships that we have. And I mean, I'm truly grateful. And again, this isn't a funeral, but I might as well say it while I have the chance. I'm so happy to have been with you guys for this 5 years, and it was largely separated for a good long while, right? It was me and Ryan and you and JD. We would cross paths every now and then, but we basically had our own shows, and we were on a group text, and that was awesome. But It
I'm
has
still gonna be
been-
on the damn group text. I'm not leaving that thing.
Yeah,
Oh
man.
gosh,
else
no, you're
was-
out. You're out.
No. I'm grandfathered in. You get the 5 years.
You got to
You know
appear
what I
once a
mean?
month on a podcast in order to qualify for the text chain.
I'll figure out a way. I know I'm on next month. I gotta be back for them bongos.
Just made up that review. I just made up that
exactly.
rule right now. So
No, now I'm really screwed.
It still has been. It's been even better to over the last few months with the changes we've made to be on with y'all more regularly and chop it up before and after each episode and
Yeah.
there's
and
that-
actually see each other.
there is a collective of 3 really wonderful people and myself on this call right now. So
Rank 'em.
just know that however
the
however
InSession power
difficult-
ranking.
however difficult you think
That's never gone
making a
well.
podcast can be, and there are many more difficult things than making a podcast, but they're
Yeah.
each one of these guys works so hard at what they do. I mean, JD has been doing this for so long, and
10
for
years.
him to maintain his job and be as great a dad as he is, and
Honestly,
that the hockey career has been on and off, but he's definitely definitely had some highs on that front as
definitely
well.
on
but
the IR right now.
It's
Yeah.
it's been a wonderful ride that the ride is not over, and I want
Yeah.
everybody to understand that.
Yeah.
and I know
But
that
it's really
seems
been
like-
really been spectacular, and I appreciate y'all more
Of
than
course.
more than you know.
Yeah.
I know it seems like I'm doing my John Lennon and going and doing my own thing now, and it feels like the Beatles are breaking up, but it's not the case because I love all you guys.
Yeah.
You know how much I
We
love
love
all
you
you
too.
guys.
Yeah. That good.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm never not going to be far away. It's never not going to be a part of me. I mean, this is always going to be home. I'm not far from home. There's no way back home. And there will always
It's
be
really,
chances
really
for
the
me
reason.
coming.
If you want to blame anybody for me leaving, it's Ryan for getting.
Yeah, exactly.
He's all
Just
big
blame
in his
me for
britches
everything.
with these.
Yeah.
He's hanging
Which
out
is
with
why you are no
Guillermo del
longer
Toro.
invited home.
Exactly. That's fair.
He developed
God.
a bad habit.
Hey, you
that
sound like my
he's not allowed
dad
to
during
come home
Father's
anymore.
Day, Brendan. Good Lord. All right.
I
I'm just
love you,
kidding.
man.
Wonderful
You
guy.
know that.
No, but I mean, I said it earlier. It's that like I wouldn't. I mean, I seriously I wouldn't have any of the opportunities that I've gotten over the last couple of years. Interviewed and met the people. Like I share my stuff with these guys because
Yeah, I wouldn't be in a critics group.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing about it is, it's like these were the first 3 guys that like I could share things, like my work, like the people I've met. JD was the first person to say, "Yeah, you can go and apply for a film festival and try to go and represent us if you want."
Yeah.
So opportunities always started with him. I think that JD has always been one of my biggest champions. And Brendan has been from the beginning just such a calm presence and everybody like
Calm?
trying to fix
Okay.
like I mean early on you were very understanding when I was doing shows with you and trying to figure out how the hell we were going to do this and there were
Okay.
some times where even like JD would be on the main show and I had to come and substitute and I'd never done it before and it was very nerve-wracking for me. But Brendan's confidence helped me get all the way and then
Okay.
the guy over
Never been called. I've been
here-
called calm before. I was
the guy over here. I'm figuring it out.
It's like
I mean,
Hollywood
truly-
Squares.
I mean,
It is, yeah.
truly, without JD and Brendan, I wouldn't have one of my favorite people on the planet. Hashtag Mr. Cynical. Hashtag
Less cynical now that he's a
yeah. Hashtag cried on a podcast.
Hashtag Crime podcast. Yeah.
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 Papa
Mr.
Leather.
Somewhat cynical.
Truly,
You know what I mean?
I should have been fired from my job. when
Yeah.
that happened. Just,
Well, you can be now. But no. Truly, I love all you guys. I love all our listeners. Again, I'm going to try to come on and do guest spots. I will be on for the end of the year show because there's no way you're not going to hear my takes on stuff. And I think the one last person I truly want to thank, other than you guys, again, because I just love you guys. I love you guys so much that you guys don't understand how much I love these 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, the most understanding people on the planet outside of the three people here, or the four of us together, is Brandy, is Allie, is Maris, and Megan, our spouses.
Yeah.
Or soon to be spouses.
Because they let us do this. They
They
tolerate
let us do
it.
this.
One of them
without
here,
Yeah.
Brandy, actually helps fund this.
Yeah.
So
You know,
It's the true owner.
I honestly, I have to thank Allie so much because we have recorded late at night, me and Jay, over the years on a consistent night. And I know that, like, sometimes literally when he gets off that podcast, he's got to go. And, you know what I mean? Because of her schedule and everything. So, but yes, I think we wouldn't do this if it wasn't for the most understanding spouses, I think, on the planet. And so I highly thank them
100%.
so much
Agreed.
for the 5 years of us being the smartest buffoons in podcasting world, to be able to have the privilege to talk with each other every week, but to talk about movies, to talk about this every week, talk about movies.
there it is. There it is. Woo.
And I just and I'll say this too, just, you know,
If we
JD has
keep
been
going,
doing
by
this
the way,
for-
we
I know.
won't actually
this
ever
is
leave.
This is literally my last thing. But JD has been building this thing for a decade. Brendan has been on for, you know, a little less than that. And people who just listen, and I'm sure people maybe listen to multiple movie podcasts if they listen to our podcast. You know, we're not the biggest podcast in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but for a fully 100% independent movie website and podcast to have gotten as significant a listenership as this one has, and also, you know, the ability to accredit writers and podcasters into legitimate film critics associations is a true achievement. I mean, it is. You talk about a saturated field. What has been built here is, you know, as small an outfit as it might seem from the outside, getting to this point of validity in the world of film criticism is no small task.
Yeah.
And do not think that this is anything about outgrowing InSession or anything like that, because InSession is a very successful, impressive organization. And I think what we have put together here on a weekly basis is really thoughtful, high quality content, because I think everyone who podcasts on here is very, very smart and eloquent and has interesting ideas and takes on the films and art that we take in. And so I just want everybody to realize how much work has gone into that, and also how much growth we have done as individuals to kind of get to the point where we are now, which I think is a point where we are regularly putting out high quality pieces of film criticism in a world where I think film criticism is kind of eroding. I think JD, you and Brendan both have done a really fantastic job of kind of preserving that classical idea of criticism rather than what mainstream criticism has been verging towards.
Appreciate
and
that.
continues to verge towards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot echo a lot of what you guys are saying. I mean, I truly appreciate the kind words. But
Now here are the bad ones. So anyway,
we can certainly save that for later. But I mean, we aren't here where we are without you guys either. And, you know, it's been quite the journey. I've loved every second of this, even as frustrating as it might be every now and then. On the whole, this has been an absolute pleasure. I love you guys to death as well. And we'll certainly miss you guys just being here every week. You know, I dread the day where Sam leaves to go to college. This almost feels like a precursor. Like this has been a little challenging, and what I imagine what it's going to be like when you watch your children grow and they mature and they evolve and they
The Midnight Special allegory comes back again.
it comes back. It never leaves us.
Oh wait, I was thinking
And,
more of a Toy Story 3 stuff, and I was going to start doing Randy Newman impressions, but no.
That also works. That also works too.
Yeah.
But Ryan and Jay have graduated and are moving out of the house, and similarly,
I'm
it's
moving
not
into the guest house.
he's moving into the guest house, just
moving into the
across
pool
Just
house.
moving up the street. Like I'm literally, I got a duplex up the street.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, this
The
is not a
studio.
forever goodbye. It's just they're
I
not
feel
going
like it's
to
gotten
be
a
here
little
every
a
day.
little solemn, but that we are not.
Well, we are technically at the end of this. Someone will be eliminated. And
Who's getting voted off the island?
That's why I use the graduation analogy, because it's in that situation, it's not a forever goodbye. It's they're just not going to be here every single day as we've become accustomed to, and so there's just it's going to be a little bit different now. But yes, Ryan and Jay will be back. Jay a little bit more so, but they'll be back. They'll be around a little bit more, and they'll for sure be here for the award show at the end of the year when it's all said and done. And Brendan and I will figure out something content-wise to, I'd like to have some sort of extra filmy kind of thing for us going forward, because I assume that there's going to be some listeners out there a little bit worried, going, okay, well, the guys that did the extra film thing and the movie series thing, that they're leaving. So what is that? Just mean that InSession Film is going to be doing the Flash and Transformers every single week? And the answer to that is no.
and the answer is double down. We're actually doing another commentary.
We're
in
reviewing
the
the
theater
Flash twice.
of the Flash.
Flash
We
twice.
saw it again. It's
Actually,
worse the second
This
time.
is actually a minute-by-minute Flash podcast now.
Yeah, God.
Okay, so this scene sucks for this reason. Oh, see, this frame, this sucks for this reason.
Next week, Ezra Miller will be on to discuss their problematic history.
No, that's definitely not happening.
I threw up a little bit in my mouth just thinking about that.
Look, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out the content thing going
more to
forward. More to come. But I just wanted to say thank you for being here, for being a part of this. The last 5 years have been absolutely tremendous, and I will miss the every day, but I do look forward to the times where you guys come back. So very much looking forward to that. And I think that's it. So
I think that's all she wrote.
appreciate you guys.
We love you guys.
Love you guys.
Simple as that. We love you guys.
Man, I just remembered, and we love y'all too, absolutely. I just remembered, I think the first time I ever podcasted with Ryan on Extra Film, I made that song for the introduction of Prairie Home Companion. Do you remember that?
gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you did.
I made the whole
remember
ass
that.
song.
Yeah.
You did. It was
That became a thing.
It was a thing of I don't know how
prided
we can
myself
sustain.
on my intros.
Yeah, I don't know if we can sustain this after this episode, but we're gonna damn sure try.
But no,
Yeah.
love y'all, 100%.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Likewise.
Love you guys too. So
Love the
with
listeners.
that-
Everybody out there too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks to all the
love-
listeners.
Yeah, thank you
Except
to
for the
everyone who's
problematic
listened.
listeners, I don't like you guys.
Yeah, except you guys. I mean, like you
If you're a
guys
bad
seriously.
person, I don't like
You
you.
got. Yeah, you got to step up your game, man. Like this is getting ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
You know
You know
who
who-
you are.
you know
You're
who
listening
you are.
right now. Look in a mirror. Fix it. All right.
Okay. On that note, as we wind down here, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our patrons. If you want to support us, that's patreon.com/InSessionFilm. We certainly love you as well. Next week on the show, probably best of the year so far. Perhaps, maybe that's what we'll do. I'll
I
talk
think
with
so.
Brennan.
Yeah. Maybe we'll wait till the first week of July so we actually hit a halfway point, more mathematically speaking. But I don't know.
Soon,
I'm not opposed to doing that as early as next week. I think we still have plenty to talk about.
Sounds
Absolutely.
like you guys got to talk about these interfaces for these streaming platforms.
That's on the horizon as well.
Nobody mentioned
Yeah.
Apple. Nobody
Yeah.
mentioned
You
Hulu.
gotta bring me on
Nobody
for that
mentioned
one.
That's a
Netflix.
Jay
stressful
will be on
topic.
for that. We also have reviews of the aforementioned The Flash that is available. We will have a review for Elemental coming soon as well. That is recorded and will be released. be sure to check out our latest Women in Session podcast. They talked about the film Tootsie and The Birdcage. That was a really fun episode. Do urge people to go and check that out. And that's it. Thank you guys for the last 5 years. Can't wait to get you guys back. Be sure to subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button as well. You can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us. With that, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you all next time on the InSession Film Podcast.
Figured out how to point to Jay.
Love you, man.